So good evening, everybody. Sorry about the slight delay. Had to teach an additional class that I had not planned on today, and I hope you got the email update. So tonight's little brief session is on the significance of the number 108 in Kundalini Yoga. And I'm going to address this very complex issue in a simple way for this session, just to give you an idea of where my research is at with this. And I sent out in the initial announcement for this particular class a sort of Q&A format that had come to me from a student who had asked about the significance of the number 108, which is a question that I've been asked about many times in my teaching career. And as you will find if you Google around or check out the books of other teachers, there are many answers to this, and none of them are quite clear. And I don't suppose, or I'm not trying to infer that I have the essence, the meaning of this number down. What we do know is that it is a very prevalent number in terms of cosmic time cycles, and that's a whole nother class that I give. And these cycles are actually outlined in the Tantras. But when we talk about Kundalini Yoga, we're now talking about the inner microcosm. I'm going to adjust the screen a bit so we could see the range roughly from my heart to the crown of the head. And when we're talking about Kundalini Yoga in the subtle body, we're talking about a science. And this is a science that involves the placement of yogic practices, or the engagement of yogic practices, along with the placement of particular seed mantras in the body. So as a brief preface to this, I'll just mention a couple of standard measurements in which the number 108, indeed several sacred numbers, comes into play. The first is the fact that the distance between the granthis, or the subtle knots that are to be threaded or broken through with this Kundalini sound, that is to say with the uncoiling power that is behind each of the chakra seed mantras, that is resonated in the Uchara practice, combining the in-breath and out-breath, flip this a bit, combining the inhalation with the retained exhalation into this phenomenon known as the internal lunar eclipse, the eclipsing of the sun, or the out-breath, by the moon, or the in-breath, which becomes full as we draw it down from the crown of the head. When this happens, we're cultivating this inner light, this inner fire that's envisioned a little below the heart in the upper navel center, as the reflection of the third eye light and sound, the sound of the seed of Om sprouting as what is called in all the tantras Kundalini, literally the coiled flame or spark of the divine, that has as its mirror a spark in the navel. When we fuse these two breaths together, we create this spark, which is universally in the Tantras described again as a dual phenomenon of light and resonance. The resonance of the source vowel behind all vowels, described as the song or the vibration of the honeybee, hum, which is made in the palate, hum, and is also the letter, the vowel, that ends each of the seed mantras, right? So when we're reciting these seed mantras, it's done to a particular count in the breath cycle, but in every case, we're envisioning this eclipsing of the moon over the sun. Some of you know this as one of the core definitions of Hatha Yoga. So getting to the actual measurements that I referred to at first, and then we're going to read a very special passage and get our feet wet as we continue this journey into the research of my work on the origins of Kundalini Yoga. So measurements, the measurement key that is used in terms of delineating where exactly in the nodal points of the Sushumna Nadi we are to place our focus is measured by what is called an angula, a finger breadth. So B-R-E-A-D, as in dog, T-H. Thickness of a finger is called angula. And we can think about an angula as a proper measurement insofar as we are tracing the connection of the nadis as they cross through these granthi points. So the measurement, for example, that comes to the forefront in terms of the range of practice in Kundalini Yoga is going to be the range of angulas or fingers that span between the heart center and the crown of the head. Why? I thought the chakras were aligned from Muladhara at the base of the spine to the crown of the head, and they are. When we begin the practice, we first engage a series of rites, beginning with the rite of avahana, inviting or summoning the sonic form of the Shakti of Shiva, or Vishnu, if it's a Vaishnava Tantra, down into the body with a series of gestures that charges the left hand with the sonic essence of Om. And that sonic essence, forgive the Band-Aid, that sonic essence is inflected into 5 seed mantras that are then installed one at a time: earth on the thumb, water, index finger, fire, middle finger, air, next to last finger, and then finally space. Each of these seed mantras are then installed literally and ritually, literally in the sense of vibrationally, ritually in the sense of with a devotional fervor, each finger at a time to its corresponding element, that is to say, beginning with the thumb or the earth seed mantra Lang at Muladhara, the next one Ving at Swadhisthana. This is a bit of a prelude to probably my next session, where I actually give the history and the history of the seed mantras and their correct monosyllabic vibrations. So these are installed in these chakras that are spaced from the base of the body to the crown of the head. But when those seed mantras are actually enacted in the choreographed practice of the yoga, which is centered on the 3-part movement of pranayama, we are working with the range in the body where those sounds are produced. Okay, let's slow down a bit here. Wait a minute. Producing sounds in the body, yes, because the idea of drawing down the sonic essence of Om symbolizes the seed from which Kundalini sprouts in the third eye and at the navel, is that the inflection of that seed mantra Om into these 6 elemental seeds are then worked. These 6 seeds are worked through the central channel one at a time by fusing the sun and moon breaths. And where do you first power a mantra? Well, all sounds, of course, all vocalized sounds begin with, I'm going to draw the screen down a bit. So the point of my middle navel to the heart, from here to here, is in any spoken experience of vernacular of language is going to begin with the out breath. We inhale before we speak, the navel's filled with air, and here to here is the letter H. In the first place where we really resonate vowels in the body, the lowest tones of the body, vowels that could be made in the body, is really the heart region. So all articulate sounds, beginning with the most subtle of all of them, meaning vowels, begins here. So if I'm chanting, for example, or reciting in this yogic practice, the sound of the earth seed mantra, Lang, with a long A, L, long A, and then the B buzz sound, begins actually with an H. All the seed mantras have an H before them in the classic tantras. So let me draw this down again. So the range in which the sonic experience of this threading power of Shakti, it literally threads through the grunties, especially this one, breaking through the palate grunty, is a sound that follows a range, articulate range, that begins in the heart, the first center or level where we actually feel the vowel rising. Bring a little more light. So from this point in the heart, through the crown of the head then, is how many fingers? We take the thumb away and begin here, 4, or let's just count hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 times 4 to the point of the Brahmarandra, literally the doorway to Brahman, where the central channel culminates at the crown of the head. 9 times 4, 4 fingers, 9 hands is 36. Now this is a very important number because within this range of 36 are 5 granthis that are meant to be pierced by each sound. The Ida Nadi pouring down the light of the moon of the in-breath through the left channel, Ida Nadi, into the heart and rising Pingala Nadi, these two conjoining here, whereas the Sushumna rises further. The Sushumna range that we're trying to thread these granthis is 36 fingers, right? But there are 3 nadis in this range that we're working with. 3 times 36 is 108. This is our first clue that we're not talking about some mystical, numerical philosophy, but we're actually talking about a range of focus for these pranayama-led yoga practices. And please, again, anybody has any questions, at any time you can post them here and I'll read them at the end. I see a couple coming in already. Okay, so I'd like to just look at a brief couple of passages and try to do this with the recording, the video on me. Here we go. So first is just a kind of stock passage where we see the number 108 brought into the yoga practice. Now again, these people are writing to an audience, these tantric authors are writing to an audience that they assume is full of initiates. So it's taken years to unpack some of the lingo and some of the science of this. And just to give you a sort of root passage or verse, we get a sense of what the importance of 108 is and how it works into the pranayama. And then I want to culminate this session with a very exciting passage from the text known to some of you, certainly a very important text, and I've mentioned it before, the Tattva Chintamani, which means the jewel essence of consciousness, or the jewel essence of cognizing reality, let us say. And its 6th chapter, authored, all of it authored by the legendary 17th century, 16th century Bengali sage Purnananda. Its 6th chapter, called in English The System of 6 Chakras, is the one translated by Arthur Avalon in the famous book, 1918 publication called The Serpent Power, and is from this man, this English scholar's our first moment of any real Western scholar trying to unpack the subtle body and to understand this Kundalini business. This was the first introduction to the West of all of this material. And it's yet but one text in a huge dynamic range of passionately written testimonies by the sages of, in that case, the Shakta lineage of Tripura Sundari, the goddess of the 3 worlds, in which we're given an insight, thematic and also systematic explication of how this yoga worked, drawing from the more terse tantras and unpacking it in detail. Well, that 6th chakra, the 6th chapter on the 6 chakras that Avalon translates is done without paying heed to the other chapters of the text. So he gives us just a layout of the chakras, and he assumes that the Kundalini power mentioned throughout that chapter of the Tattva Chintamani is the same version of Kundalini that's defined in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the famous, soon to be infamous text that gives us this false notion that Kundalini is a dormant serpent at the base of the spine. I'm giving you all this prelude so that when we go into the main passage here, I want you to feel the excitement that's there and realizing my goddess, they're actually giving, this guy is actually giving an insight into the science. Purnananda is teaching us how the number 108, albeit cryptically teaching us, is actually worked with Kundalini in a very systematic pranayama. First, we have this brief passage from the Bhuta Shuddhi Tantra. This is a great name because Bhuta Shuddhi, purification of the elemental body, literally purification, Shuddhi, of the elements, Bhutas, is the daily tantric ritual assigned to all initiates, all lineages from the 5th century to really the early 20th century or late 19th century, all initiates underwent this purification ritual, which is nothing other than the practice of Kundalini Yoga, that which threads through and breaks the granthis, which store lifetimes or even recent karmas that have been attracted to, accumulated as actual subtle substance that blocks us from the realization of who we are. By threading the sound needle of Kundalini up and down the central channel in this daily practice of Bhuta shuddhi, for which this first tantric passage is named, we stay open and attuned to the light of the third eye, the sonic essence of divine Shiva Shakti that pours and coils down through the central channel, enlivening us with breath, but also with the playful ignorance that I am just human. This is our passage from the Bhuta Shuddhi Tantra. Tatret tara shivalingena yojayet kundalim param dhyatva brahmam mayim tatra shattam ashtotaram japet. Kundalini, that highest essence of the goddess, whose very form, when cognized and realized in the body, is the presence, linga, of Shiva. Shiva is manifested as the awakened consciousness of your own being whenever and wherever Kundalini is manifested in this practice. Right? And this begins, we're taught, tatre tara itara, which is a word for the mark of Shiva that is the lightning bolt or the flame of the third eye when it opens in deep meditative practice with this pranayama. It is the first sign of Shiva. And this is for another session, but there's actually, as I intimated earlier, a dual experience of visualizing, cognizing this Kundalini power as a lingam of Shiva, or a bright light that comes in as the flood of Satchidananda joins it, being, consciousness, and bliss vibration. But it is the goal of generating this light and this sound in the center, according to the Bhuta Shuddhi Tantra and many, many of my sources. This is simultaneously generated with a focus on the third eye, so that you're actually creating a connection between the two poles in the breath channel, not the whole Sushumna, but really the range in which sound and breath flow on a stula, or physical level, which is from the bridge of the nose down to the upper navel in a normally breathing human being, the physical breath. So we're trying to join these two centers, which both light up and manifest, according to all tantras, all lineages, so many pieces of testimony, at the same time by the yogin who's perfected the science of this practice. So one should meditate on the essence of the absolute, Brahma Mayim. Where? At this center. How? Shattam Ashtotram Japet. By reciting Japet. And it simply says the 108. What does that mean? It suggests that I'm meditating at the third eye, because this is where the doorway to the absolute is traditionally noted in the tantras. But what is it that I'm reciting Japet 108 times? All right? Leave a question mark there. Later in the Bhuta Shuddhi Tantra, we're told, where this theme is returned to, Ashtotara Shattam, 108, Japtva, having recited whatever it is, 108 times. Tasmat Papad Vimuchite, one becomes freed from all impediments in the body. So clearly, whatever this practice is, it's opening this third eye. And we know this because it is the amrita, the nectar of immortality, that we're after in this practice, that is said to be, as I've taught in a few different sessions here, said to be of limitless quantity in the Sahasrara chakra, the crown lotus. This is what we're really trying to break through to. And then on a subsequent series of inhalations, we draw that powerful amrita back down into the body, right? And then this passage ends, where'd we go? Mano jivatmano shuddhi. Through this act of purification that includes some form of reciting something 108 times, right? The manas, one's base pure awareness, M-A-N-A-S, manas or mano, jivatmano, the essence of your life force becomes one with your awareness. In other words, something is pooling or gathering. And the manas, your pure awareness, is that which is expanded into Shiva awareness when this light of the third eye is opened anyway. How is this done? The author, by the way, is Shiva, and he says he's teaching this to some version of Shakti, his consort. Sundari, oh beautiful one. This is accomplished pranayamena, through pranayama. Okay, now let's turn to the system of 6 chakras, and I'm just going to read through this passage and give you just kind of a darshan, just a sense of firsthand, almost shock value, like, wow, we're actually reading a passage that gives us the core elements of Kundalini Yoga, and it's going to give us some form of a reference here to this, the significance of 108. So this is, let's see, this is the 7th chapter, I believe, yeah, of the Tattva Chintamani, from which Arthur Avalon, from its 6th chapter, drew his material, unfortunately slightly off from the, in his book, The Serpent Power. So the author, Purnananda, says, Puna Kundalinya Sahasraram Muladaram Papanam Aha Lakshabam Tatta Sakundalini Parashivat Lakshabam Laksha Drishabhana Vishititam Paramamritam. That Kundalini draws down from the place of Parashiva, meaning the crown lotus. This is the target, Lakshabam, or the light that this produces is the target, excuse me. Laksha Drishya Varnam Vishishtam. One should attempt to distinguish or discern or tune with, at the eye center, a light that signifies whatever's coming. And whatever's coming, we're given Param Amritam, the supreme nectar that is to be drawn down in this practice. This is Parashiva Samarasya Amritam, the inundation, literally, Samarasya, the flooding of, the moment of flooding of the sonic essence of Parashiva that's drawn down into the body. Pitwa Nityananda Mahodaya. Through drinking in this, the ocean of this nectar, one experiences, beautiful, Nityananda, perpetual bliss, the bliss of expanded consciousness, but also the tactile, sensual bliss that is equated to the flooding of this nectar. Okay. And he goes on at some length talking about the bliss, right? But then he says, Purnananda says, Nirukta Sahasrara Gamana Pattam, the pathway to the 1,000-petaled lotus that this nectar comes down, is given here in definition. He says, the definition of this pathway is that it runs down Punar Mule, Muladhara Chakra, from the root in the crown of the head, Mule, down to the Muladhara Chakram, or to draw this nectar as the result of this practice. Right? And he goes on. Sarda Tri Valaya Karnena Swayambhu Lingam. Vishtaitva Tishtati Arta. How is this done? How is this nectar tapped into? By engaging with the visual of the light of Kundalini coiling 3.5 times at this center and at the base of the spine as well. And when this light is actualized, not just visualized, that's the first part, but actually actualized as a power of Shiva in the body, one realizes that Swayambhu Lingam, the one who is self-born, the one whose presence, Lingam, is self-born in the body, that is to say Shiva, is encircled, enveloped, present in the whirling flame of Kundalini. So we're envisioning in the pranayama at some point this birth of Shiva that you see in some of the chakra scrolls that I've shared, and I think I have an image on our Patreon page of one of them where the Kundalini as a serpent shape actually is birthing out of her mouth an embryo of Shiva. And so what this is that what this signifies is a moment in which the Shiva nature born out of the fire of illumination in the body is produced through this pranayama-based practice. So let's jump down, and here we have the first reference to 108. Evam Vyatva Japin Matram Shatam Ashtotram Shive. Shatam Ashtotram means 8 above 100, 108. Oh, goddess Shiva. By reciting the mantra 108 times, by meditating on the points where the mantra is recited 108 times, one is reciting the garland of matrika, the mothers, literally the sounds of Om that are breaking apart now into the alphabet, breaking apart specifically into the sonic manifestations of this Amrita pouring down. Where from? Agya Chakram Samanayet. One is to lead their awareness to this point called empowerment chakra, Agya. There, one recites the matrikas. How many times? Well, we're just told 108 is the meditation. Okay. I think that's about good for now. We could take it from there. Let's just see if there's a little bit more I saved to read to you. Okay. Now, why and how is this done? Ida Pingala, Ida cha Pingala, he says, Chaiva Shushumna Chitrini Tata Ramanadi Tad Cha Madhye Panchanadi Prakirtita. And he goes on. So the 5 breaths, the pancha vayus, are drawn into the central channel in a point of coiling that powers this Kundalini energy, right? And this power is slowly drawn down from the crown of the head through Ida Nadi, which he mentions. And normally we breathe out, of course, rising sun through the Pingala Nadi. But here, the subtle essence of the Sushumna is to be discerned. Chitrini Sushumna in this practice that involves 108. In the actual pranayama count, that is fairly universal from, I'd say, from the 8th century all the way to the last Tantric texts in the late 19th. There is a pranayama practice that is engaged called pranayama trayam, 3-part pranayama. And this, again, is my first introduction to the results of my research. So we're taking this with a grain of salt, but I think this is where my PhD is definitely going with this topic, right? So there's a curious count that's involved where in each round of 3-part pranayama, meaning an elongated in-breath, kumbhaka, a pause, retention of that out-breath that's about to rise, that fosters the eclipse of the sun and moon that we were talking about. And then the third being rechika. So inhale is puraka, literally filling the body with the light of the moon. Kumbhaka, the pot shaped of the kumbhaka, the rounded shape of a full vessel, the full body that's expanded with the power of in-breath. And then rechika, which means release. And there's really a fourth. There's also a kumbhaka at the third eye, which is to say at the end of the exhale. So we retain the breath there in an effort to open the channel of the Sushumna to the third eye to the crown, where we're able to tap into this beautiful sonic essence of light. This Kundalini energy, incidentally, according to all these tantras, can only be discerned in the moments of breath pause, because it is the power of the pranavayus, the 5 pranavayus, in breath, apana, out breath, prana, udana, spoken energy, the energy of uttered speech, samana, digestive or centering breath, and vyana, dispersing breath, the not breath as necessarily oxygen and carbon dioxide, but here the wind, vayu, the current that disseminates nervous energy, blood, etc. Okay, when we inhale and pause in kumbhaka, we create this natural vortex of energy. That is to say, a coiling up of the 5 major pranavayus that is coalesced with or timed with japa. We've seen this word japa, J-A-P-A, which means recitation. Repeated recitation of what? I've drawn the in-breath in. Well, we have 5 particular major seed mantras that represent, again, the inflections of the seed point of Om. So they all come from here. We begin with earth, then water, then fire, air, and space. So I inhale to a certain count. chanting to time that count or the duration of the inhale, the syllable lung for earth first. Then that syllable is recited, choreographed with breath retention, choreographed with the visualization of a flame whirling on a candle wick in many tantras, or simply a flash of lightning that appears from behind the eclipsed sun and moon that you're also envisioning. So we're creating this visual of light and sound that actually, according to all these tantric masters, will manifest into a realized experience of sonic essence that erupts into a flame that opens up and pierces the granthis. So what I'm trying to generate then in this 3-part pranayama is a repeated pattern of counted inhale, pause, and exhale, which handles each of the respective seed mantras in due order. And that formula that's given as one of several grades of difficulty throughout the tantras is this: 16, inhaling puraka, the seed mantra to the count of 16, pausing for the count of 32 matras, which is roughly a second, so 16-second inhale, roughly. 32 matras for kumbhaka, while the visualizations I just spoke of are going on, and the repetition of the seed mantra is stoking the fire. And then release through the Pingala Nadi of the out breath, and this happens for 24 counts. So we have 16, 32, pause, and then 24, count of exhale. As I recite each seed mantra, lung, 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 for 16 counts, envisioning that cool lunar light fusing in the heart, glowing behind the full moon. New moon is the crown of the head. We inhale the pot of air, which is the full moon. Counting lung, 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 with these visuals and a few other techniques that are a little beyond this session to dive into. We begin to stoke this fire, and then with luck, we're able to actually manifest this Kundalini fire, which happens very subtly, and there's directions on how to discern this, particularly at the end of the in-breath. There's a pattern of visualizations that helps us to really lock into the central channel and hopefully stoke the fire in the navel that rises as the Kundalini, paired with the third eye. But until we get there, we do the practice. And if we haven't opened the Sushumna, we then for 24 counts back to the third eye. Let's go back to our passage here, and we'll add all this up. Kundalini Yoga Prakara. And now, he says, I will teach from my guru's revelation. His guru is a fellow named Brahmananda. The Humkarena Kundalinya, how to invoke the weapon mantra, that is to say, the flaming of Kundalini, that ascends to the door of Brahma, Brahmadwara Paryantam. Sorry, I don't have my glasses. Can't read everything that I have in front of me too easily. This is what my guru, Purnananda, says, teaches in his Shaktananda Taranganiyam, in his treatise called the different parts of the bliss of experience of Shakti. And this is a reference, by the way, to the bliss engendered in our body through manifesting these seed mantras in this practice. And then he says, Kundalini Yoga Prakara. These are the moments in which Kundalini, the coiled power, is yoga applied. Right? And grand finale. Oops. Okay. So, Ashtotaram. Oh, there it is. Lost my place. Dyatva japin mantram shattam ashtotaram agya chakra vishuddha chakra nahata chakram manipuram chakram ashtotaram. One after another, the different chakras are engaged with the recitation of the 108. Okay. We inhale with each particular each mantra to the count of 16. Retention, 32. 16 plus 32 is 48. Exhale, 24. Totaling those three counts, we have the number 72. But what about this fundamental key meditation point called the Agya chakra, which is really the engagement when we have the breath retained here. We're engaged here visually. What is the count remaining? 36. 36 rounds of retention after the exhale. We are envisioning the light of the third eye flaming open as the sonic inflection of whichever of the elements we're on. So with the earth, long, 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 36 rounds. Incidentally, you'll recall, that is the finger span between the heart and the crown of the head. In other words, the range in which the articulate sound of each seed mantra, whether it's long, being, room, etc., is experienced in the body in both the physical range of la and the subtle But when we do this three-part pranayama and our drishti is at the third eye, we're looking up to the crown center. And here, chanting 36 rounds, which actually each round is really half a second or so, according to my practice. So chanting long, 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 there's about 2 longs a second. So you're talking about roughly 18 seconds at the end of this three-part pranayama. We have this fourth part. But 36 mantras or 36 rounds of the seed mantra. So 16 plus 32 plus 24 plus 36 with my final drishti is 108. Thus, without giving the whole system of Kundalini Yoga away here, as much as I love everybody, of course, this has to be handled with great, great respect in terms of how the full practice is developed. And even in my own practice, I take very respectful baby steps. But I'm giving you the rough outline of how the number 108 features into or becomes a guide for the Kundalini Yoga practice. That is to say, the core practice of all modern yoga, inherited from these tantric texts, but unfortunately through some of the divergent hatha yoga manuals which seek to suppress the system of Kundalini Yoga in favor of various sexual practices. In the real original text, such as the Tattva Chintamani here, we have these extended passages in these human-authored, what are called exegetical or commentarial, discursive explanations of the tantras. We have the full science of Kundalini Yoga given in terms of what one is to do, at which spatial orientation, and for how long. Very, very perfected science. And sort of for homework for the week, and I really want to invite everybody to engage in these sessions and also to respond with any questions or reflections to this recording once it's posted. But sort of our homework for the week, tomorrow on Monday, I'm going to post this wonderful piece by the modern guru, modern saint as I would call him, Gopi Krishna, who wrote Living with Kundalini, Kashmiri man, ordinary fellow on the surface who was a government employee who had the experience of the light and sound of Kundalini erupting in his body through just a normal meditation. Perhaps in past lives he was an initiate into one of these systems. But at the time of his departure from the body, I believe in the late 1980s, he was hoping that scholars would discover the science of this Kundalini, which he articulates in terms of his own visceral experience, a very down-to-earth guy who is interested in the discovery of the science of this subtle body practice that opens us up to the state of awakening, allegedly. And this is one of the great inspirations of my life, is Gopi Krishna's work. And as I proceed through unpacking some of the science of these texts that I've been working on for over a decade, I'm going to start inserting into our dialogue and onto the Patreon page some excerpts of Gopi Krishna, so we could begin to see how this is not necessarily something so mystical at the end of the day, right? We're talking about a subtle body which is really yet to be discovered by science, which nonetheless is discovered through the science of Tantric yoga practice. So this video will be posted by tomorrow, Monday, which is what's tomorrow? Tomorrow, I believe, is the 6th. Yes, the 6th of November. And from there, I'll be preparing for the next session that, of course, everyone is invited to, where we're going to start talking about the actual sonic power of the individual seed mantras, which never changed from the 5th century to the 19th. The very seed mantras that are applied with Kundalini Yoga. In Kundalini Yoga, the application of Kundalini, there is always one of the seed mantras that is applied to generate, or if you will, germinate from the seed points of the third eye and the navel, the liberating power of the coiled one. So until next time, thank you so much for all of your support. Thank you so much for being with me and believing in me. And we're going to make some magic happen. Namaste.